Gang, gang, gang. It's your boy back with an all new video. You guys seem to enjoy my last two Thomas Sowell reactions. So you guys requested for me to react to a short history of slavery by PragerU. So I'm gonna check that out. If you like these type of videos, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, show me support. Ever since I've been reacting to more conservative content, more right-leaning content, I've been noticing my videos have been getting less views. I've been losing subscribers, and it seems like the algorithm hates to see people with more of a right-leaning conservative point of view get traction. So make sure you show some love and support and drop in the comments what I should react to next. But let's get right into it.
And now for a brief history of slavery. Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people. It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown. It existed before then. It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World. In fact, when the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner.
What? When I tell you this, please excuse my ignorance, but growing up in the inner city, I'm Philly born and raised. Anytime we taught about slavery in school, we were taught that when Christopher Columbus came over, he introduced slavery to the Native Americans, and they R-worded them, they beat them, and before that, they were living on the land, and all the tribes were peaceful. You never hear anything about the Native Americans pitting each other in slavery and eating each other. Bro, I never heard that before. And the same thing that I know now is a lie, that when the quote-unquote evil white people, this is the narrative that's given to us, went to Africa, everybody in Africa was one united Africa. Everybody was living good off the land, and the white people came, R-word, kidnapped, and brought people over to the new land. People had no choice. Now I know that's false, because after watching Thomas Sowell video, I did my own research. Africa was participating in slavery beforehand. So this idea of quote-unquote white people invented slavery and it was on the basis of racism is false. And now that my eyes are starting to open up, I can see a lot of the narratives pushed were just to make white people look evil, wicked, and so that we can have a victim complex as people of color or black people.
Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them, all white by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century and later by the Ottoman Turks. Slavery existed when the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean and most of Europe from the 1st through the 5th centuries. Slavery existed when Alexander the Great conquered Persia in the 4th century BC. It was so common that Aristotle simply considered it natural. The slave master model was just how the world operated in the great philosopher's day. Slavery existed during the time of the ancient Egyptians 5,000 years ago. As far back as we can go in human history, we find slavery.
Wow.
As renowned historian John Steele Gordon notes from time immemorial, slaves were a major item of commerce. As much as a third of the population of the ancient world was enslaved. Here's the second thing you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery. In 1833, Britain was the first country in the history of the world.
This is something that they never teach in schools either. You never hear about Britain freeing the slaves or white Europeans fighting for the freedom of the oppressed black slaves. They push the narrative that pretty much black people freed themselves. Like we started the Underground Railroad. We started to protest. There was some help from the Quakers, some help from the religious folk, pushing the narrative that we're all equal under God. But outside of that, we did it ourselves. You never, when I say you never hear about white people pushing the abolitionist movement to free slaves, because then it would go against the narrative that all quote-unquote white people are evil and wicked.
The world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed by France, who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies. Then, of course, came the 13th Amendment in the United
Amen.
States Constitution. After centuries of human slavery, white men led the world in putting an end to the abhorrent practice. That includes the 300,000 Union soldiers, overwhelmingly white, who died during the Civil War. Now, am I saying that this makes white people better than anyone else? Of course not. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth, and the truth is that human history is complicated. No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless. Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes of North and South America or the heinous actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires, to name just a few.
Man, forget that. We're never, because I hear people argue for reparations all the time, that the quote-unquote America owes us stuff, the white people owe us stuff, this and that. But I never hear anybody say, well, the African tribes that captured us should pay us. I never hear that. I never hear about getting any type of reimbursement from the rival tribes that sold their the neighbors they were warm with into slavery for any type of reimbursement. I never hear that. I never hear any type of guilt passed back on to Africa because they like to push this United Africa thing, or blacks and Africans have to stick together, when in reality it was Africans capturing their own people in rival rival lands and rival tribes and selling them over to white people. And they're never told to apologize for that. They're never told to pay anything back, and we just breeze past it. But we couldn't be here unless our own people weren't capturing each other. And we never talk about that at all.
Instead, we're told that slavery is a white phenomenon. And like all persistent lies, this lie spawns a bunch of other lies. On social media, I come across extraordinary depictions about how Africans lived like pharaohs before Europeans came and laid
the one meme, we were kings. We were kings before they came and got us.
Waste to their paradise. I wish any of this were true, but it's not. It's a fantasy. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other black Africans, and in many cases, sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors. Whites didn't go into the interior and round up the natives. They waited on the coast for their black partners to bring them black bodies. The stark reality is that our lives had very little value to our ancestors. Here's the third thing you need to know. If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today, right now. That's the lowest estimate that I could find. Other sources say there are many more. For context, that's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States.
There are more people in slavery now than before? What the?
Soldiers, human trafficking, forced labor. These are the conditions that currently exist within the same sub-Saharan region where the transatlantic slave trade originated. African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then. And no, they are not being purchased by any country of white men. In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries. But we hear almost nothing about that. Just like we hear nothing about how slavery was universal until good people in Europe and America ended it 2 centuries ago. Why? Because our so-called leaders, black and white, wouldn't profit from it. Black victimhood is nothing if not profitable. It elects politicians and funds racial grievance groups. And if black Americans began to view themselves as partners in the American dream, if we embraced the patriotic spirit that holds all men are created equal, the patriotic spirit that is our real heritage, then the race hustlers would soon be out of business. And who wants that? I'm Candace Owens, author of Blackout for Prager University.
Hey man, shout out to Candace Owens. I think she's one of the brightest minds of our generation, and she should be a role model for a lot of young women. One thing she didn't mention, and that has been brought up as recent, there's a lot of slavery and trafficking of children into S-word slavery coming out of Mexico in a lot of these places where the illegal immigration is going on. When these people are coming over, they're bringing over drug mules. They're bringing over children to the ST, I'll call it. They're bringing over women to sell into prostitution and things like that. And it's such a disgusting act. And it's nothing. And I never hear anybody on the left talk about everybody that comes over and all the crimes that they are committing. Because when I hear them talk about it, all they talk about, all these people coming over for jobs and a better opportunity. But I never hear them talk about the human trafficking that is going on and the people that are being sold into slavery from across the board. And it's such a disgusting act. And I think slavery is one of the worst things ever introduced to this world, to force somebody into into labor, sex, being a soldier, anything like that is a disgusting act. And the idea that we're just going to pin it all on white people and just play the victims when a lot of Africans actively participated is foul. The way that we push this history and this narrative, we never talk about slavery in Asia. We rarely talk about slavery in Africa. We just pin it all on the quote unquote evil white man. And it's just a disgusting narrative. I think if we want to truly rid the world of this act that I would call an abomination, we have to stop blaming just white people. We have to stop victimizing ourselves, and we have to uplift people. There's no reason that we should have I'm going to just estimate, over 1 million people in Africa in slavery. There's no reason we should do that. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Your boy out.